For all its beauty and splendor, the wilderness can be a cruel teacher. The desert doesn't forgive ignorance. People think a hike is just a walk, that the sand is soft and the sun is warm. They take selfies at the trailhead, throw a bottle of water in a day pack, and think that's enough. It's not. In the desert, the sun doesn't just shine, it punishes. The heat rises off the dunes like a furnace. There's no shade, no landmarks, just an endless sea of heat-scorched terrain that looks the same in every direction. One wrong turn, and you're lost. And if you don't bring enough water, you've already written your own death sentence. Let's venture back to the desolate desert where survival is earned, not given. This is Outdoor Disasters. For the Steiners, their hike in White Sands National Park would be devastating. David Steiner, 42, Ornella, 51, and their 9-year-old son, Enzo, lived quiet lives in Bourgogne, a small town not far from Reims, approximately 100 miles from Paris, France. He ran a communications firm. She had worked for 2 decades at the Reims City Hall, rising to the position of Director of Youth Affairs. They were good people, hardworking, steady, the kind who saved up for the things that mattered, but they loved to travel. In 2014, they went to the American South for 10 days. They loved America's endless roads, the foreign sky, the wildernesses that seemed to go on forever. It was so vast and untamed compared to Europe. When they came home to France, they couldn't stop talking about it. On Facebook, they posted pictures, blue skies, vast as oceans, highways that stretched forever, canyons cut open by time. It was different there, bigger, quieter. It made them feel small, and that felt good. So they made a plan for next year, 5 weeks, the American West, a dream stitched together with red roads and green pines and the names of places they could barely pronounce. Utah, Nevada, Wyoming, New Mexico, Yellowstone, the Grand Canyon, White Sands, all of it. They mapped it out carefully, miles, motels, canyons, parks. They wanted to see the places where the earth still ruled, where the land hadn't been tamed. In the summer of 2015, they left France behind, said goodbye to the stone houses and cobbled streets and crossed the sea. They arrived in Seattle, Washington, with the goal of reaching Santa Fe, New Mexico, and then flying out from there. It was on August 2nd that David's Facebook profile featured the vivid, electric blue water of a natural pool in Yellowstone National Park. Everything was right for the Steiners so far. They drove more on the open road of the American West. They drove for miles, through heat, through dust. They camped sometimes, stayed in roadside motels, trekked on long hikes. They took pictures everywhere they went, enjoying life like any typical family would during an epic trip. But somewhere out there, something quiet and brutal was waiting. They had come to chase wonder. What they found was something else entirely. Something that would shatter the family. After 10 days on the road during their 5-week journey, the Steiners reached White Sands National Park, a stunning gem tucked away in the heart of New Mexico. They say White Sands is beautiful, and it is. A shimmering sea of gypsum dunes in the middle of southern New Mexico, glowing white beneath a hard sun. It looks like snow at first, endless, blinding snow, but warm to the touch, dry and soft. The largest gypsum dune field on Earth stretches out over 275 square miles. You drive in on a single road, Dunes Drive, and after a few miles, it feels like you've left the world behind. No trees, no shade, no direction except what you bring with you. The wind erases footprints within minutes. You can look back and not know which way you came. The temperature swings fast. In the summer, it can hit 100 degrees before noon, and the dunes reflect the sun with a cruel kind of brightness. There's no water out there, not in the sand, not in the air. Your sweat dries before it forms, your lips crack, your throat burns. Dehydration doesn't come slowly, it hits hard. By the time you feel dizzy, it's already too late. And then there's the illusion of safety. The dunes are low and rolling, reaching heights of about 30 feet, with some areas exceeding 60 feet. You think you'll always be able to see your car, but you crest one dune, then another, and the next one looks just like the last. It's all white, all glowing, no shadows, no landmarks. You lose your bearings without realizing you've lost them. People get turned around out there. They wander too far on what's supposed to be a short hike and vanish into the heat and silence. It was August 4th, 2015, when the Steiners arrived at White Sands National Park. They parked. They stepped out into the heat. The sun was already high, past its mercy. It was noon. They had two 20-ounce or 0.6-liter bottles of water for all three of them, the kind you buy at a gas station. Not enough, not even close, but they didn't know that. Or maybe they did, and they thought they could make it quick. The plan was to hike the 4.6-mile or 7.4-kilometer Alkali Flat Trail. It cuts into the heart of the dunes. No shade, no trees, no sound but wind and your own breath. The trail is marked, but the dunes are constantly shifting. What was visible in the morning may vanish by noon. Rangers recommend bringing a gallon of water per person. They advise hiking early or late and taking breaks to rest. Most people don't listen. They think they'll be fine. Most are. Nevertheless, the Steiners walked into the dunes. At first, it would have seemed like magic. The white sand curls in all directions. The silence. The shimmer. But the wind was dry and the heat pressed on their backs. The sun was a hammer. There was no shade, only the curve of the next dune and the promise of more sky. Right away, the heat was taking its toll on them. They gave the boy 2 sips for every one they took. That was love. Not the kind you speak out loud, but the kind that lives in small, desperate choices. However, they didn't believe they were in danger this far into the hike, despite the dwindling water supply. That was probably why they kept going. They weren't going to turn back after a mile. Not after the flights, the planning, the miles they had driven, the wonder they had promised their son. Not after showing him the geysers of Yellowstone and the red cliffs of Zion. So they continued hiking. The sand scorched their ankles through their socks. The boy's hair clung to his forehead with dust and sweat, and his legs were starting to slow. But he was still walking, still talking, though his words were soft, slurred by heat. The Alkali Flat Trail appeared to be a simple route on the map. A loop, flat, just over 4 miles. It was nothing compared to the hikes they had done before. But out there, the trail didn't feel like a loop. It felt like a trap. The wind erased their prints behind them. The dunes shifted subtly with every gust of wind. The horizon shimmered, wavering like a mirage. There were markers, small red posts stuck in the sand every few hundred feet. But under the glare of the sun, they were hard to spot, blurred against the sky, half buried by wind. But they kept walking, venturing far off the trail. The sun was high and cruel now, the kind of heat that strips the strength from your bones without warning. Every breath came hotter than the last, like breathing through cloth held over a fire. They were far enough into the Alkali Flat Trail that every direction looked the same, white, glowing, endless. Ornella stopped walking. Her face was pale beneath the flush of heat. She blinked slowly, trying to steady herself. Her lips parted, dry and cracked. Her knee ached from a previous injury. She told David she didn't feel right. She'd go back. It was better this way. Better for her to return to the car while they finished the loop. He didn't argue. Maybe he should have. Maybe 100 things should have been done differently. But in the heat, your mind narrows. You make quick decisions because lingering in the sun feels like drowning. So she turned back. They had no idea this would be the last time they would see Ornella alive. Ornella was alone in the dunes. The temperature was over 100 degrees or 38 degrees Celsius. The air didn't move. Ornella's steps slowed as the sand gave under her feet, fine and soft and endless. Each dune looked like the last. Each horizon promised the end, and each one lied. She dragged her feet, eyes half-lidded, skin glistening with sweat that would not last. The bottle of water she had clung to was empty. She was lightheaded now. The dunes tilted beneath her with each step. Her mouth opened once, twice, as if to call out, but there was no voice left to use. It was just 300 feet or 91 meters after she left her husband and son when she collapsed in exhaustion. There was no scream, no grand moment, No panic, just a slow collapse, the body folding inward like a tent collapsing in the wind. Her knees hit the sand first, then her hands, and finally her cheek rested on the burning earth. She turned her face from the sun out of instinct, not hope. Her breaths came slow, shallow, and ragged. She blinked at nothing. The horizon shimmered and swam. A gull could have flown by, or a plane, and she wouldn't have seen it. She was too weak to rise. Her limbs would not obey her. The heat had sunk in deep now, not just on her skin, but inside her, boiling the blood in her veins, stealing the light from her mind. She could not yell. She could not crawl. All she could do was lie there, a shadow, in the sea of white, waiting. She must have known then. She must have realized, in some quiet, terrible part of herself, that no one was coming soon. The car was too far. That her family was drifting deeper into the dunes. That her strength was spent. There, in the vast quiet, Ornella lay. The wind moved the sand around her slowly, as if to cover her gently. The sun beat down, and the sky remained clear. No clouds, no mercy, and somewhere out there, her husband and child were still walking, still trying to make the loop, still believing they would meet her at the end. Meanwhile, David and Enzo kept walking deeper into the desert. The sun was high and the dunes burned like iron. White sand, white sky. It all looked the same now. The heat pressed down on them, ruthless and alive, a hammer without pity. Sweat dried before it could fall. The air was still. Too still. Enzo followed. He didn't ask questions anymore. David said, "The truck is right up there." He pointed to nothing. Just more sand. He had said the same thing minutes ago and continued to repeat the statement. Enzo looked where he pointed. Then he looked at his father's face. David's face was red, eyes dull, lips cracked. He was talking slow now, slurring. He wasn't drunk, he had heat stroke. David was swaying like a man about to fall. And still, he walked. The sun didn't let up. The dunes shifted with the wind, erasing their tracks as they moved. They had no shadow to follow back. It had been just a third of a mile since they left Ornella, but that was all David had in him. Maybe he thought he could make it, that salvation was just over the next rise. A ranger in a jeep, a family on a day hike, anything, anyone. But the desert offers no such kindness. And then he fell. No warning, no final words. Just collapsed into the burning sand, the heat swallowing him whole. Now it was just Enzo, 9 years old, alone while his father is lying in the white sand unconscious. He stood there, stunned, surrounded by endless white silence. There was no path forward, no shade to retreat to, only the stillness of his father's body and the crushing realization that he was utterly alone in a desert that did not care whether he lived or died. Enzo stayed beside his father. He was trembling, lips cracked, skin flushed with heat. His water was gone, his legs were weak, he was scared. And in that vast, blinding wilderness, stunningly, Enzo was still alive. Meanwhile, White Sands Park rangers were on patrol on the trail. It was supposed to be a routine patrol, a loop through the alkali flat trail. No trouble expected. Just the same white dunes and the same burning heat. Then one spotted what looked like someone lying on the ground. They rushed over. When they came upon a woman lying lifeless on the ground, they checked her pulse. She was dead. The sand around her was undisturbed. No dragging, no signs of struggle. She collapsed and never got up, eyes shut, like she'd given up quietly. Then they found a camera. The last picture showed a man and a boy, both smiling. The sand was bright behind them. The woman had taken the photo recently, which meant she hadn't been alone. They called it in. A woman was found dead on the trail. And a man and a child are still possibly wandering around the park. Search teams moved fast. They spread widely, walked slowly. Every mound of white might hide someone lying just beneath it. Minutes passed, then more. It was 45 minutes after they found Ornella that one of the search teams spotted a figure near a low sand dune. A figure still and small. They approached with caution. It was the boy. Beside him lay the man in the photo. They checked his pulse. David was dead. The ranger knelt. He touched the boy's shoulder. The boy said something, but he spoke in French. The rangers didn't understand. He was breathing, shallow but steady. He was alive. They offered him water. He drank slowly. There were no tears. He was too dehydrated for that. Just a dry face and empty eyes. He had sat with his father as the sun killed him. He had stayed with his father. That much was clear, probably for hours, maybe longer. The boy didn't know it yet, but his mother had perished as well. Enzo sat in the vast whiteness of white sands. It was beautiful, achingly so. The kind of beauty that should bring peace, but it hadn't. Here, something had broken, something sacred. The sun still burned, the wind still moved the sand, but the world had changed, and so had he. A place so full of light he had witnessed something dark, and he would carry it with him always. White sands would remain beautiful, but for Enzo, it would be a place of doom. It was Wednesday morning in France when the doorbell rang. Alain Steiner opened the door. Two officers stood there in uniform, gave him an envelope. It was from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Alain opened it with steady hands and read the first few lines. Alain, the 69-year-old, cried like a child. His son David was dead, and his daughter-in-law Ornella was too. The letter said they had given their last water to Enzo. Everything they had. They had done it knowing what it would cost. The ministry didn't yet know how they died, only that they had. Their bodies were found in the white desert of New Mexico, that their son was alive. Soon after, Alain spoke to Enzo on the phone. I told him, "You're coming home to Nanny and Granddad. We can't wait to see you," he recalled. Earlier, the boy had been taken to a local hospital. He was sunburned, weak, and silent. He didn't speak English, and no one at the sheriff's office spoke French, so they found someone, the mother of a deputy's girlfriend, who spoke fluent French. She came in and sat beside the boy and waited. When he spoke slowly. He told them about the road trip that started in Seattle, stopped in Yellowstone, and then eventually in White Sands. That his mother had hurt her knee and turned back to the car alone. She collapsed just 300 feet away from where they had left her. Enzo didn't know that part. He only knew she never came back. He told them about his father, how he started acting strange, how he kept saying the truck was close when it wasn't until he fell. He told them how he sat there beside him. Enzo should have died too. Children are more vulnerable to heat stroke. But David and Ornella gave him most of the water, not enough to save themselves, just enough to save him. That night, Enzo's grandmother, Nanny, boarded a plane in Paris. She landed the next morning in Albuquerque. She went straight to the hospital. They flew home shortly after. In the end, David and Ornella made the only choice they could. They gave their son the water, almost all of it. That choice saved Enzo's life. They had brought 2 20-ounce bottles. Not nearly enough. White Sands is beautiful, yes, but the desert drains you quietly. The dunes stretch wide and white, and there is no shade, no mercy, and no second chances. Park officials recommend at least 1 gallon of water per person, per day. They also didn't sign the trail registry. Maybe they thought it would be a short walk, a quick stop. Maybe they didn't check the forecast, over 100 degrees by mid-morning. Maybe they just didn't know. They should have turned around. But heat exhaustion can cause disorientation. They were good parents. You don't give your child your last water unless you are. However, they were unprepared for the heat and how fast things can go wrong. This was the perfect storm for a tragedy. A remote trail, extreme heat, an old injury, insufficient water, and too far from help. And it happened fast. It always does. Their story is a warning now. White Sands will remain beautiful, but it is not gentle. And if you walk into it without respect, without preparation, it will take everything from you. By the time you feel thirsty, you're already in trouble. When your mouth goes dry and your vision blurs, it's too late to turn back. Your body starts shutting down. Your thoughts scatter. You lose the ability to make good decisions, and in the desert, that's how people die. It doesn't matter how fit you are, or if you're a good parent, or how far you drove to get there. It doesn't care what you meant to do. The desert takes what it wants. If you walk into that heat without preparation, without respect, you're not hiking. You're gambling with your life, and the desert always wins. If you get lost in the desert with no water, the most important thing is to stay calm and conserve energy. Avoid moving during the heat of the day. Rest in the shade or create some with clothing or rocks, and travel only in the early morning or late evening when it's cooler. Always move in one consistent direction to avoid walking in circles. Use clothing to cover your head, neck, and skin to reduce sun exposure and prevent dehydration. Never drink from sources that may be contaminated, and don't eat if you have no water. Digestion uses fluids you can't afford to lose. Signal for help by making large markers in the sand with rocks or gear that can be seen from the air. Stay visible. Stay put if you're truly lost, and let rescuers come to you. Every movement costs you moisture. Ration your energy like water. The desert doesn't announce itself. It doesn't roar or rumble. It just waits, quiet and patient. One mistake and you're dead. You don't get second chances out there. Start early. You tell someone where you're going. Or you don't go at all, because if you walk in unprepared, you'll find yourself trying to survive an outdoor disaster. If you've made it this far, please consider clicking those subscribe and like buttons. Want more outdoor disasters content? Check out these videos I believe you'll enjoy. Thank you for watching.